today I'm at Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca in the parking lot in half of a car. That's because today I'm behind the wheel of the Electra Meccania Solo. It's a compact electric commuter vehicle, and it's called the Solo because, well, there's only one seat in it. It's a solo seater. It's also an inverted trike, which means it's got two wheels up front that handle steering and a lot of the braking, and one wheel out back that handles motivation, propulsion. That rear wheel is powered by an electric motor that puts out about 82 horsepower and around 94 pound-feet of torque. And Electra Meccania says the Solo will have a top speed of around 137 miles per hour, though in production it will limit that to around 82 miles per hour, probably for two reasons. First, EVs just don't do that great at really high speeds. Their range drops dramatically above around 50 miles per hour. This is a very narrow, sleek car, but hey, anything you can do to improve range is good when you're dealing with an EV. Also, it's very narrow, about half as narrow as most other cars on the road, which means the last thing you want to do is chuck this thing into a corner at around 120 miles an hour. Now, despite being half as narrow as your average car, it does feel pretty planted around this parking lot at around 15 or 30 miles an hour. And that's because a lot of its 1,380 pounds lives underneath the floor, way down low. That's where you'll find the lithium-ion battery pack. It's a 16.1 kilowatt-hour unit that gives this EV about 100 miles range. And charging it takes around 3 hours with a level 2 charger. Now, a lot of what this vehicle is even for is given away in its specs. It only seats one. It's got two trunks, one up front and one out back, and it only does around 100 miles of range. Electra Meccania says that most trips, those sort of commuter trips back and forth to work, your little jaunt to the grocery store, are under around 35 miles, and that with 100 miles of range, one person can easily get to and from work without having to recharge this thing. And there's space up front and up back, around 10 cubic feet total for your groceries or suitcase or anything you might need to bring. Now, the Solo is a very Spartan vehicle, but it's not as Spartan as you might think. It's got a couple of creature comforts. For example, this very pre-production vehicle has heated seats. I've also got a Kenwood stereo here that gives me something to listen to while I drive. And there's a backup camera, which improves safety in parking lots and things like that. It's kind of cool. Unfortunately, air conditioning is an optional feature, though I think with the sort of California-centric markets they expect to be selling this vehicle in, air conditioning is not really a must-have. It's a like-to-have. Now, around this parking lot, the things that I really like about the Electra Meccania are partially the steering. There's no power steering, so it's very direct, and there's not a lot of vehicle to chuck around, so it does feel like there's a good connection to the road. Although when you're backing up or parking, the lack of power steering can really be felt. You got to put some muscle into turning this wheel when the vehicle stops. I also like the very direct electric torque. There's a very good connection between what your foot's doing and the motivation from the rear wheel. That's typical of electric vehicles, but when you're dealing with a vehicle that's this lightweight, you can sort of feel it even more. Now, in the con category, I will say that this is a much louder electric vehicle than I've ever tested before. That's partially because there's not a whole lot to it, so you get a whole lot of road noise coming up from below, but there's also a lot of mechanical noise from just over my shoulder from the electric motor. It's not so much that it's a deal breaker, but it is something that you'll want to note if you're used to whisper quiet electric cars. Now, I joke that this is half of a car, but one of the benefits of the Solo is that it costs about half as much as the least expensive electric cars on the road today. For example, a Hyundai Ioniq seats 5, does 120 some odd miles of range, but it costs around $30,000 before incentives. Electra Meccania expects that this car will sell for just $15,500. That's no incentive, that's just the price that you pay to walk away with the car. It's pretty impressive. They're taking pre-orders now for a small cash deposit and expect deliveries to start arriving en masse in around Q1 2018. Now, I'm not 100% sure how many of these they expect to sell. This is a very niche, very small vehicle that's going to have to live on the road with large SUVs. So there's going to be a little bit of a perception of safety, I think, from American drivers. But personally, I think it's worth keeping an eye on because the packaging is interesting, and I'm sort of a fan of quirky little cars like this one.